spare, and he wins.
For the title! Got it! SummerSlam! Super Slam! Complete.
That is not the spare that I was thinking I wanted to shoot to win. I have the trophy, I have the Super Slam, I have the Triple Crown. I can retire. A really happy guy.
Congratulations, Jason Belmonte.
The 2020 US Open, Jason Belmonte, a young man from Orange, New South Wales originally, who is now one of the biggest names in the history of 10-pin bowling. Jason, great to have you with us on the Grandstand Cafe. Even just hearing that, how you feel?
Mate, cheers. Yeah. Well, I mean, I still get a few goosebumps, to be honest. You know, that was a tournament that I unfortunately hadn't won yet, and it was the one kind of missing out of all the majors that I had won. So when I saw all those pins fall for the very final shot and I knew I'd won, it was pretty much a sea of emotion just flooding out.
So those of us who are around sport know of you because we need to know of these top line performers around the world, but there's a lot of general sporting fans who don't know the Jason Belmonte story and don't know much about 10-pin bowling. So where do you want to start?
How long do we have?
Yeah, well, I'll set it up. Your dad opened a bowling alley when you were a kid, and that's how you got into the sport. Yeah.
So a really long time ago, Mum and Dad got a crazy idea to open up a bowling centre. Neither of them were bowlers, never bowled a ball in their life, but Orange in the central west of New South Wales didn't have a facility like it. So they invested all their money, all their parents' money, and said, let's build a bowling centre. So by the age of 18 months, when I could lift the ball up myself and kind of bowl, I've been bowling nearly every day since. And I'm very grateful that Mum and Dad decided to do that because I love the game. It's taken me all over the world. I've met some pretty amazing people along the way, and I wouldn't change a single step anywhere along the way.
And it's interesting that because you started so young, it provided the genesis of this new technique, which you've continued to use through your professional career. I think on a grand scale, we think of those that have got to the top of their sport doing things with two hands instead of one. We think of tennis and Monica Seles playing with two hands, not just on the backhand side, but the forehand side as well. So can you describe the way that you deliver the bowling ball down the alley?
Yeah, well, I mean, it originated because I started so young. So the bowling ball was just too heavy for me to use with a traditional one-handed technique. So I would just pick it up as best I could with two and roll it down the lanes. And as I was getting a little bit older, I was getting better at it. And then the one thing that I could do that no one else in Orange was doing was I could hook the lane. I could hook the entire lane with this massive curveball. And that really, to me, made it cool and a lot of fun. So the best way to describe it is imagine at the point of release, the halfback spiraling the pass to the 5-8 or the scrum half to the fly half. I mean, that's probably the best. It's not, most people, when I say, oh yeah, I bowl with two hands, they immediately imagine, legs apart, ball on the ground, kind of pushing it between my legs like an old grandma. But it's way more closer to a footy pass.
Yeah, you swing the ball out to your right arm essentially, and your right hand controls the final point of the delivery. Jason Belmonte is with us on the Grandstand Cafe. Now, did you ever try and do it one-handed? I'm sure you did if you had all those years at a bowling alley.
Oh, for a really long time, no. Mainly because I just couldn't. The bowling balls we had back then, like nowadays, we have really, really light bowling balls. But, back in 1985, 86, the lightest ball we had was 10 pounds. So you could imagine a toddler trying to lift a 10-pound bowling ball. Even if I wanted to, I just wasn't able to do it on my own. So It wasn't until later in my life when I was a little older and I was strong enough to try a traditional style that you had people around you, people that you would bowl with or against, and they would say, hey, isn't it time that you stopped, bowling like a little boy and started to bowl like a big boy now? You're old enough. And, I would roll it down the lane, and I hated it. It just wasn't for me. I was terrible at it. I was pretty good with two hands at that point. So, to see my scores, drop a lot, and I just wasn't having a lot of fun. Maybe a handful of shots I would try, and then basically, say, no, this isn't the way I'm going to be bowling for the rest of my life.
And take this with respect. I mean, people like the nuance until you're really good. I mean, that was the part of the story of Monica Seles. It's like, oh, wow, here she is playing double-handed forehand as well as backhand. So has that been a part of your experience as well?
Oh, absolutely. The more success that I had, the louder the traditionalists were, but there was also becoming an understanding of, well, hold on a second, he's actually winning. So, why are we trying to convert him when he's beating everyone else? And I think pretty much in anything that I've ever seen, whether it be sport or business, typically the most, not the most, I shouldn't say that, but somebody who does become successful that is, out of the norm, isn't quite textbook, they have an advantage over everyone else who is traditional because they're doing something just that little bit differently that perhaps does give them an edge. And I think for me, that was always the case was, I could curve the ball more and I had more power than everybody else. I knew once I could control it, this could be a huge advantage to me against a traditional player. So now that I'm, 36 years old, been on tour for nearly 10 years, the growth of the two-handed technique is, astronomical. I mean, we're talking about, nearly a quarter of the players, youth players in the US already adopted the style, and that number is only growing quite quickly.
Top 10 pin bowler Jason Belmonte with yours truly, Quentin Hull, on the Grandstand Cafe. Now, Jason, can you explain? We heard the commentary about the Summer Slam and the Super Slam when you won the US Open this year. So what events constitute the Super Slam?
Yeah, well, first, Rob Stone, the commentator, he also had he'd also done some work with the WWE. So the Summer Slam is a WWE reference that I think kind of just came out accidentally.
Okay.
So I wasn't sure what he was talking about.
Hey, as commentators, we often have those moments. So, okay, scratch the Summer Slam. Tell us what the Super Slam is.
Yeah, so the Super Slam is all of our majors. We have 5 major championships. We have the USBC Masters. We have the World Championship, the Players Championship, the Tournament of Champions, and the US Open. So those are our 5 majors in the history of the PBA, and owning all 5 is considered the Super Slam. And there's only been one other player in the history to own all 5. His name is Mike Orby, Hall of Famer, amazing guy. So to be able to join him as the only 2 players in history to own all 5 majors is it's really, really special. Now I'm trying to focus on, how do I become the only player to own the Super Slam twice? So that's my next goal.
So I've used a fair few tennis references here. You're looking to become the Rod Laver of the 10-pin bowling world.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm looking to be compared to Rod Laver. He's pretty amazing. I feel like at the end of my day, when I hang up the laces and I don't throw any more bowling balls down the lane, I want to look back and say, I was able to achieve things that no one in my game had ever done or maybe even thought was possible. And my whole career, I've basically, each step of the way, I've had people basically say to me, listen, you bowl weird, you bowl different, we can't help you, you're not going to be able to win, you're not going to be able to achieve your goals by doing this, we need you to convert to the traditional style. And each time I kept saying, the more you say I can't do it, the more I want to do it. And, I work as hard as I possibly can to, not just to prove them wrong, but to prove to me that I'm capable of actually, setting a goal, even if it is outlandish and dream-filled, that if I can do it, then there's no reason why anyone else listening that, has a specific goal in their mind, why they can't achieve their own kind of goals and dreams. So, yeah, when it's all said and done, I'll let anyone and everyone compare me to whoever they want. But as long as I feel complete and that I gave it everything I had every single time I laced them up, then I'll retire really happy.
So compare the notoriety that you have in the States, in the bowling fraternity, to the level of recognition that you get in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, it's considerably different. I mean, Australia is such an outdoor sport nation. It's the cricket, it's the rugby, it's the, it's hard to, I guess, tell people how different it is in the US. I mean, bowling over there is on the major network television. Millions of people go bowling regularly every week in the US, and it is quite large. So when you come back home, to be honest, the one thing that I'm not sad. I'm not sad that I don't have the notoriety here in Australia, because I like the idea of coming home and not necessarily getting bugged all the time. But the one thing that I am sad is that the sport itself certainly hasn't, I believe, received the attention that it deserves. It's a beautiful sport. It's a difficult sport. It's a sport that your children and your grandparents and yourself can all do at the same time. And if we're going to compare tennis, like I play a little bit of tennis, but I don't really enjoy playing tennis with people who can't hit the ball back, right? So
Yep.
It's really, really difficult to go and play something like tennis without having someone of equal or better ability. In bowling, I can be the best in the world, and the very next time that my son gets up to bowl, he can bowl, and our scores aren't reflected by each other's. I can still perform to my best, and he can perform to his, and we can both really enjoy our time. And finally, the ball comes back in bowling. I mean, tell me, is that not one of the best parts of the sport? You throw something away, it hits pins, and you make a big crash, and then the machine will bring it back to you. I'd say that's a pretty good selling point right there.
Oh, look, you've done a good job there. Jason Belmonte is with us, number one 10-pin bowler in the world. And you talk about the recognition in Australia. I must admit, I think from a general perspective, if you ask sports fans about 10-pin bowling and its place in Australian culture, you sort of think Cara Honeychurch, 1998 Kuala Lumpur Commonwealth Games, the one time that 10-pin bowling was in the Commonwealth Games. Would you like it to see it returned in some respect? I mean, what a tool that was back then.
Oh, absolutely. And Cara is still very much, involved in the sport of bowling, which is amazing for us because she is the CEO of our governing body. And I think she uses a lot of her experiences in events like the Commonwealth Games in Kuala Lumpur to, help the sport grow. We would love to see bowling in the Commonwealth Games regularly or even in the Olympics. I think the one thing that we bowlers would most like about joining those types of events, you get immediate credibility, and I say this with all respect. Most people may not look at, say, a synchronized swimmer as a sport that they would be interested in to watch. However, it's in the Olympics, and when you receive gold, that athlete automatically gets the credit that they absolutely deserve, but it's because of the event that they're attached to. So I feel like bowling, if it were to be included, we would immediately receive credit from the mainstream that don't know much about the game of bowling because, well, if we're receiving Olympic medals or Commonwealth medals, it must be a very serious thing. So we're pushing very hard to try and, be a part of these games.
And having someone of your talent and list of achievements certainly is helping that, Jason. Now, back to the beginning of the bowling alley in Orange. I believe, is it shut down at the moment because of Corona? Tough times for everyone, but the start of your story's under threat, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, well, bowling is a very public place. It is a venue where the public can share equipment. So it was one of the first businesses, that the government requested to close the doors. And I believe we'll more than likely be one of the last businesses to open back up. And it has been a really rough time. My parents have, worked incredibly hard for the last 36 years to keep the venue open and to be a very successful venue. So, closing its doors, not easy, but the one thing that my family and I are well aware of is the bigger picture. And whilst we are in Orange, it is a small regional town. We understand that the risk of a cluster here in town might be small. The point is we have to do what's right as a collective group, as a community. And it's not easy to close your doors and stare at the bowling centre with lights off, but we also know we would much prefer to go through some economic hardship than, to have loved ones that we know or that others that we may not know, die because of, wanting to open the doors so we can just make a couple of bucks.
Yeah.
So it's not easy. It really isn't. Everyone's feeling it. We're feeling it no different than a lot of people. I think the goal here is just to stay together, be positive, and do what you can to the business while the doors are closed. I know Mum and Dad are spending a bunch of time and money on the inside of it, revamping it. So when the doors are open, when the government thinks it's safe, our customers are going to have an amazing, facility for them to walk into.
A couple of quick ones to finish, Jason. How many 300 games have you bowled? Or is it too many to keep count?
No, well, that's a number that it's pretty difficult to forget because, it does have a lot of value. So on the PBA tour, I believe I have 24 perfect games, but around the world in competition, I have 97 perfect games.
Oh, so the 100 surely is the next immediate goal. 3 more 300s and you get to, 100 300s. Amazing.
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to, this is going to sound a little silly, but I'm kind of hoping that I time my 100th in town here in Orange. I want it to be, I even jokingly said to a few mates, I said, I might just miss that final shot if it's not in Orange. I might just, wait for that 100th to be where it all began. But we have to open the doors up to the facility first before I can do that.
It's a bit like Eliud Kipchoge finally running under 2 hours in that very pristine condition that he had for the marathon. I mean, he wanted to do it his way and get it televised. That'd be great. Get some big TV trucks in Orange for the 100th 300 by the world's #1 bowler. How many years on tour you reckon you've got left, Jason?
Oh, that's a really good question. The longer I'm out there, the harder it is to leave home. I mean, my kids are getting older. I have 3 beautiful kids, an adoring wife. So it's harder and harder, but I still have a few things I want to check off my list. Obviously, I want to win the Super Slam twice. So there's still that I want to achieve. And listen, no matter what happens on my professional career, I will always want to travel and compete. Maybe not to the extent of what I am now. So I will never give it up. But I would probably say in the next, 2 to 3 years, the travel will, it'll quieten down gradually until there's a point where, maybe I'm just going to focus on very selective events. But I'll make that decision closer when I feel like I'm ready to.
Well, it's been great to have a chat, Jason. Thanks for informing those that aren't aware of your story and embellishing a little more those that know of your high standing. Congratulations on what's been a stellar career so far, and good luck for the quest to become a 2-time Super Slam winner.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Jason Belmonte, what an interesting character he is, changing the game with the way he plays, and others are following, and certainly at the top of his craft.